Hey there, and welcome to the You Men podcast. My name is Demi, and I am the Men's Engagement Coordinator at the Aurora Center for Advocacy and Education. Before we jump into our first episode, let me give you some information regarding what this podcast series is all about. My goal is to get professional thoughts and opinions about topics and issues male-identified folks face in our current society and how best to tackle them. As we progress, we'll talk about topics like loneliness, therapy, exercise, and relationships, just to name a few. This is all about how we as male-identified individuals can lead a happier and more full existence while championing the well-being of others with different identities. Today we're going to be talking with a staff psychologist at Student Counseling Services located at the University of Minnesota. We're going to be talking about his experiences working with male-identified clients and why men seek out therapy less than non-male-identified folks. Enjoy. Thanks for joining me today. I just wanted to maybe take a second and if you could tell us about a little bit about yourself, like name, title, and what brought you to therapy, or maybe what keeps you in therapy, or whatever you think that you want to say about that.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jake Leffler. I use he, him pronouns. I have been at the University of Minnesota for 5 years now. My title here is staff psychologist and outreach coordinator. So my background is in clinical psychology, where I did a master's and doctorate program at a school called Rosemead School of Psychology.
Okay.
And I do a bunch of different things here. Part of the role that I have is doing outreach, so helping put together initiatives and different fill different requests related to mental health information on campus. So, and your question was also about what got me into therapy.
Yeah, well, like what made you want to go into therapy in the first place?
Yeah. So in undergrad, I was a psychology major, and I knew that a bachelor's in psychology major qualified me to be, not to do therapy, and I knew that I had to like kind of go the next step as far as grad school if I wanted to be able to pursue a licensure and be able to talk to people. And I found through different like volunteer roles that I had during that time that working one-on-one with people can be a pretty effective way to help them tell their story and maybe get to a deeper level of what's going on. And when you start to build a relationship with somebody, they can start to tell you things that they may not just tell anybody, and so it can help them be more honest with themselves if they feel comfortable with you. And so I think I've really found value in, what a therapeutic relationship can bring as far as healing. And then, so I decided to go after grad school, and in grad school, I got a variety of experiences. Found that working with the college population was something that I really enjoyed. It's a time where a lot of self-discovery is happening. Questions are being asked maybe for the first time, or new skills are being acquired or mastered. And so I've just worked at like 5 different colleges now, and have just found working as a college counselor has been a good fit for me.
Nice. What was your favorite class in? Because I was a psych major too. Mine was psychopathology. I feel like everyone likes psychopathology, but I'm wondering what was yours.
Yeah, psychopathology was fascinating. Just like the things that you learn in that class open up your mind to like how complex the human brain is and the human body is. I feel like social psychology was probably my favorite. The phenomenons that can go on, that help explain some like larger trends in society. Pretty fascinating.
I like social psych as well. I was only disappointed just because I was like, ethically, you can't do a lot of the studies anymore. Like the Zimbardo study, all of those things, like you can't do those, but it's fascinating how human beings do act in different ways. So I liked those for sure. Have you done any studies yourself, like
don't know if that's something you like to do. I know you do research, or I know PsyDs are more practical, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, have you done research, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, my degree is a PsyD, so more clinical focused than research focused. You know, my dissertation was on the effectiveness of DBT for suicidal adolescents. So, looking at the that particular therapy approach and its effectiveness for adolescents who are chronically suicidal, and so that's the biggest research project I've been involved with. Done a few things here and there, but more so that were just more as like somebody who was either a participant or somebody who just helped collect data. So
yeah. I'm sure the dissertation was enough. It is thick and large. Yeah. Okay. Oh, cool. Mm-hmm. So in general, what do you think therapy is important? And I asked that because I went to the University of St. Thomas, and we had, you could get 10 sessions for free. Just I don't know if they do that here as well, but I didn't see very many people who actually used it. And I went once or twice and I was like, okay, this is cool to at least have for free. But I don't know that everyone's side is important. So I'm wondering what you think. Why is therapy important, just in general?
Yeah, well, I guess I'd answer that a few different ways, I guess, depending on how much the viewer might know about therapy already. I think therapy is important because it provides a space that people can kind of work on something that maybe feels like it needs a little extra attention than what they can typically get from, say, like family or friends.
Okay.
Usually I think people seek out therapy because something popped up in their life in which they might feel stuck, or like there's a unique challenge that just isn't being conquered the way that normal things are. Like normal coping skills just can't keep up. Also, like it also is important when there's a lot of changes that are happening in life. Coming to college can be a huge change. Building a brand new social network, pursuing a degree, figuring out finances, lots of things that are like new when it comes to college. And so, therapy can be a helpful space to help organize, making sure that for example, when anxiety comes up, sometimes it can make us avoid things. So therapy can help you sometimes talk about things that are hard to talk about emotionally, right? That are scary or are difficult to face alone. And so I think not only, can you go to therapy to learn new things, but also just to be able to go to places inside of you that might be hard to go to alone, without the presence of somebody else to help anchor you as you talk about those kinds of things. So
yeah, I think so. The importance, I think, there's not very many times, I think, in life that we just get to sit and talk about and think about the things that have happened to us in general. So I thought that it was super important because you actually get to do that. But generally, I don't think that going even through my life, I don't know that there was a time where even parents or my siblings were like, hey, what's going on? Like, how are you doing? And actually go into it more. So yeah, but I think it's great that people can do that. I will note that with men, it's a little bit different going to therapy, it seems like. So for example, when it comes to therapy, in my family, I'm Nigerian, and it's just a thing that no one talks about. I was very surprised a couple years ago. My brother who lives in Houston now, he was like, hey, sometimes therapy is helpful. Maybe consider doing that. I was like, this is strange. I never thought that you would say that. But it seems like men don't like going to therapy. Do you find that that's true? Or maybe that's something that people say, but it's not true actually. What do you think?
Yeah, well, in general, more women go to therapy than men, and typically, there's some studies that have found that to be true. I think, I think you can look at it a few different ways. Going back to maybe the social psychology answer, I think society plays a role in what we expect is normal, and as far as functioning.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes um, men can be like repressed and no one notices, right?
True.
Just because like that's just a little bit more normal.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like, man, keep it. It's like you can't see it necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And like you said too, I think when somebody asks you that question, like, how are you doing? You know, I think the general answer that people expect back is good.
Good. Okay. That's okay.
Yeah. So there's often not as many like red flags, I feel like, when it comes to like when somebody who's like male identified could benefit from going to therapy, because it starts to like, and it starts to have to get like to some like risky behaviors before things start to pop up of being like, are you okay? Like, do you, you know, are you doing all right?
I would think that maybe it gets to a higher level, and then someone else around them maybe is like, maybe you should go see someone. I don't know that. Maybe it's not just like, you know, I feel like I need to go see someone myself and then go. But that makes sense. When I was a hall director, I did find that it was mostly like something's happened, like drinking's happening, or like strangely someone peed in the elevator. Like something's happened, and now it's okay. There's something that seems to be wrong, rather than them just being like, I moved to college here and there's all these things. I like to talk to someone. So something usually has to happen. Do you think there's one like issue that maybe college male identified people are facing that maybe doesn't bring them into therapy, or just in general, like from your practice, like what do you find that the biggest thing that brings them in, perhaps?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, you know, a good amount of students that we see here in general come in because their mental health is affecting their academics.
Okay.
And so that, you know, is a fairly like time sensitive issue. And so, you know, it makes sense that a lot of students will come in to try to get through the semester. But, you know, in school, sometimes people can be in survival mode, you know, and in therapy, you know, we try to help somebody feel like they can move from maybe just surviving to thriving. And you know, sometimes you do have to take a step back before you can take a step forward, which is sometimes what also, you know, makes folks afraid to go into therapy. You know, because you have to start to talk about things that might bring up uncomfortable emotions.
That makes sense.
And so, yeah, I think that's, you know, maybe one thing that it is common. I think everyone has maybe a history or a past that might be hard to reflect on, you know, and to various degrees. But therapy, you know, the belief that I have is, you know, that emotions are adaptive and eventually they run their course if we give them the time and a day to surface.
Okay.
And you know, we're not born with a blueprint, you know, of how to navigate life.
Very true. Yeah. Gonna learn along the way.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know, you have a psychology background, so you had some training, you know, a little bit on how the mind works and how the body works. But you know, it can be helpful just to kind of take some space of just being like, oh, I've noticed, you know, build some self-understanding, you know, and notice some trends and patterns that you see in yourself, and start to customize like how you go about taking care of yourself based on what you're learning.
Yeah. I think I learned in college that running is helpful, because I've always like, the first thing if you go to therapy is, are you exercising? And I didn't know how important that was. There was a week, I think it was finals week. So when you talked about their people coming in for academic issues, is it generally like, are you finding it's like people, is it like ADHD things like, or is it just like, there's lots of things going on, I can't like get things done, or how does that manifest, like when they're coming in for academic issues?
Yeah, you know, like ADHD, anxiety, depression can all look pretty similar, you know, in the sense that it can like start to impair concentration, focus, motivation. So like those three things are pretty like common symptoms that we see. You know, ADHD, fairly common as far as it starting to surface as more a problem in college, just because time management starts to become.
No one's here to tell you that do your homework or get up even. It's just you get up and go to class whenever you.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And you know, sometimes some things we're able to be managed easier in high school, right? Or like further on in life, because you like the structure of having having no structure sometimes can be quite overwhelming. And sometimes the transitions don't quite go as expected, and sometimes that can lead to depression, or sometimes that can lead to anxiety. I mean, the anxiety is probably the number one issue that we see. Sometimes related to academics, sometimes just in general, and sometimes social anxiety.
Okay. And that's so like anxiety for academics, is it kind of like that thought of like, I don't know if I'm gonna like pass or I mean I can get the social anxiety being like because when I was in college it was like, how do I make friends? Where are these people to make friends with? And even now, like outside of college, it's like, well, you don't have the people, like you're not in a floor captive with a bunch of like 30 people that you can just talk to. But with the academics, is it like a think about fail or things like that?
Yeah, I think there's that piece, of performance. Like, am I doing enough, or am I getting good enough grades?
Okay,
is this going to lead to internship or a job afterwards?
Yes.
Is this a wise investment? But then also I think there's what grades mean. If your identity is related to how your academic performance is,
that's true. Yeah,
it just starts to create more pressure.
Yes.
In addition to maybe pressure you're getting from social, like such as parents or siblings. When you start to compare yourself to a brother or sister or a peer. So
that makes sense. I really do. College is a really difficult time just to figure out, like, you're here by yourself. You have to. First of all, I feel like people ask like all the time. Like the first couple things I got asked, "What's going to be your major?" And you think, "Oh God, I just got here. I don't know." And then what with like, what have people told me that I'm good at? Let's do that. And then like at some point, someone's probably like, "Is this for me? Is it not?" I think those are really big decisions for an 18-year-old to 19-year-old to make. People have midlife crises, like that's a thing. But I think I feel like that's coming earlier for people. Maybe just like having to get out of college, like, what do I do? How do I make money? And there's that old like thoughts of like the social sciences don't make as much money, so like be an engineer, things like that. There's a whole lot of things, and the family telling you should be a doctor or things like that. And so I could see there's a lot of things that college students in general are facing. Do you think, in terms of, because we talked about women, female identified people seeking therapy more maybe than men, do you find maybe there's a unique challenges for men when like addressing their mental health, like, or why that gap is? And I think we talked about a lot about social psychology, just how the world is. If there's anything else, but if there's not, that's okay.
Yeah,
I think.
Well, I think sometimes, therapy can be viewed as something that is kind of a last ditch option. It needs to be like, the problem needs to be really serious in order to go to therapy, as opposed to being something that you can like go in and out of in your life, and use kind of as a tool or a resource as needed. And so I think sometimes men will be told like oversimplified solutions to their problems, like just work out more, right? Or don't think about it, or go on a bender or something like that. And sometimes those things are often like band-aids, or sometimes those problems can make things worse, as you observed when you were in RA. And so sometimes those are the things that end up getting people into therapy, right? Are like the band-aids that get put on the original wound. And so therapy can be a space to really start to look at like, not only like, prevention, but also like, finding some kind of, root issue that's that's coming up. And so I think sometimes that takes time, and it takes money, like our services are free to students, which is, a really cool opportunity that, that you gives to students here. But, navigating insurance can be tricky as
Yes.
well. And then potentially having an insurance bill go to home
Exactly.
can be
Yeah.
something where you have to navigate that conversation with your parents. And so I think all those factors can play a role into whether like men will go to therapy. And also I think there's that trust that if I do take time out of my busy life, this person's going to help me, right?
Mhm.
Versus this person's going to judge me, or this person's going to like make me feel worse about myself if I talk about something that's hard
Yeah.
to talk about. And so I think men typically feel more comfortable when there's like a direct referral, right? Like
Yeah.
this person, I've worked with this person before,
You've got
and they
that
helped
person,
me, right?
Yeah.
And I think, in general, I think people do feel comfortable with like a warm handoff like
Yeah.
that. But I think that can also be a barrier. It's just like the unknown, right?
Yes.
Of like going to somebody you don't know who's a complete stranger and telling them about personal details of your life.
Yes, I could definitely see that. Just I worked at Medica for a while, like answering phones. I feel like
Mhm.
everyone should answer phones at some point in their life. It's a good life skill. But yeah, just like asking, like people ask, like I noticed that some men asked, like, "Hey, have you like when people did call, like, can you send me like it was Medica behavioral health? Like, have you worked with this person before? Do you know like that clinic? Like, are they good? Are they not? Things
Mhm.
like that."
Mhm.
And I'm sure that another problem is that maybe some men don't want to go to therapy already, but then like it takes a long time to.
Mhm.
You can go to any doctor to fix your leg,
Mhm.
provided that they're good at fixing broken legs, but like
Mhm.
you have to shop around to like figure
Mhm.
out the person who works for your personality. That
Mhm.
could also be a little difficult to do.
Mhm.
Do you find that male identified when your clients generally want to have a male identified therapist, or they don't mind?
Yeah, I think I think women in our culture have been looked to more as like the ones who provide nurture. And so I often find that more often than not, students who come in will request a female identified therapist.
Okay.
But, every once in a while, I'll have somebody who requests to work with a male therapist. And I think it kind of depends on the nature of the topic.
That makes sense.
So, yeah. So, I think sometimes there are certain things that maybe it feels like, I, as a male in a male body, that I might have more lived experience and understand.
Yeah.
And so maybe that might be important to somebody.
Yeah.
But just kind of, it's often a case by case basis.
Yes, and I could see that since women are seen as the more nurturing, like the more female friends you have, they probably do a lot of that emotional labor already.
Mhm.
So I'm sure a lot of men go to informal therapy with like their friends and just asking them questions rather than
Mhm.
going in, and that woman then has to do all of that and then do her life and all those things too.
Mhm.
Are there some common misconceptions that you run into with identified clients?
Mhm.
I found that the first time I went to therapy, I was like, "Where's the couch?" I thought that was a thing that's
Yeah.
there, but then it was just like 2 seats like this to just chat.
Yeah.
Are there misconceptions like that? Sometimes some of them I think can be funny, but some of them,
Mhm.
I had a therapist once. He was like, "I don't usually ask people like, how does that make you feel?" Just
Mhm.
because everyone that comes in is like, "Oh, are you gonna ask me a question?"
Yeah.
Did you find things like that? Maybe common misconceptions?
Yeah. Well, Hollywood doesn't do us any favors
No.
as far as what they put out in the movies and the TV shows. And so if your only experience, therapy is what you see, portrayed, or, if you hear a horror story
Yes.
about somebody working with a therapist that they didn't have a good experience with. But, therapy's evolved so much since it, began over in Vienna, so it's very, there's so many different types of therapy now. And so I think it might be good to, just educate yourself on what are some of like the most recommended treatments for the issue that you might be wanting to talk about in therapy. And that can be enlightening. I think there is, I think, a little bit of mystery to like what therapy is, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And I felt that when I was, in school as well, like trying to like really understand like what is therapy, but the thing is it can be a lot of different things. Here at SES, we do primarily short-term therapy. So it's a little bit more goal focused. And so I think sometimes there's a misunderstanding that like when you come in, you're going to have to talk about what your therapist thinks is important versus like, you really get to set your goals for therapy and how in depth you want to go after those goals. Some students, they just want to come in and really focus on sharpening up some of their skills around, studying, right? Or something like that, and don't want to take a deep dive, and that's totally cool. Some other students do want to go a little bit, more into certain things. And so we have individual therapy. We also have group therapy for that. I think a lot of students, unfortunately, don't know about the power of group therapy and how amazing that can be, life-changing it can be to really connect with others on a deeper level and in a space that's facilitated by a therapist. So
one thing that I find is a really common misconception is people think therapy is just talking, and so like we'll go to like a therapist and talk, and then they'll talk about like, so for example, like, oh, they told me like with my parents, so like how I was raised, like their problems with that, and but then they don't do the things that therapists actually tell them to do, because I don't think people realize like how hard therapy is, because you just talk, sure, maybe, but then afterwards you actually have to do those things, and it's very, very difficult. Like,
sure,
how do you talk to your mother about like how she raised you and like the problematic things she says? That's difficult to do, and people don't realize that like there are difficult things you have to do. Well, like DBT, there's like different types of therapy that people do. It's not just like what you see in the movie, you just sit down and talk. Do you think, is there a movie that you think, I think Good Will Hunting, I don't know if you've seen that one. I feel like that one's sort of a good depiction, but do you find that there's a better depiction of like what you would think, okay, this could be a certain type of therapy, this is good? What do you think?
Yeah, well, Short Term 12 is this.
Short Term 12?
Yeah,
okay.
Short Term 12 is a movie that kind of shows like a community mental health center for adolescents. And I worked in community mental health before working in college counseling, and it's and I feel like that does a pretty good job of kind of showing some of like well, I think it feels a little bit more real than some of the other movies that I've seen.
Okay. Short Term 12.
We actually respect confidentiality in real life.
Yes. Yes. No, you can't just, yes.
I feel like a lot of Hollywood will have their therapist fall in love, with the main character in the movie.
Yeah. So that's like the number one rule. Like, no, like, relation. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Or even I didn't know that. So I think I saw a therapist once, like, outside, and they had told me before, but like, people, it depends on you. Like, they're not just gonna be like, oh, hello, I know you. Like, they will just leave you alone.
Yeah.
Depends on if you come up to them, things like that. But yeah, in movies, they make it seem like they just like, they'll talk to other. I mean, I think therapists sometimes talk to each other to help each other figure like client things out. But I don't necessarily know that you like give people all the details or things like that. It's just like, I have this client, these problems. What do you think to help me be able to help them better, kind of thing. Yes. What do you think of Good Will Hunting, though? Do you think it's like sort of accurate or not at all?
Yeah, Robin Williams is the therapist in that one,
yes.
right? Yeah. I'd have to like remember exactly what he says. I know like the spirit of his character really, I think, captures what a therapeutic relationship can feel like.
Yeah.
In the sense it's kind of somewhat like a mentorship, in the sense that you're trying to help somebody go from A to B, and but sometimes, as a therapist, you don't always have the direction in which, to go. You kind of learn it, you both learn it along the way as you build more self-insight. And I think the part that you talked about earlier in regards to why therapy is hard is it's trying to apply that insight that you learn to your life and make changes and changes are difficult, especially when it involves other people. As you mentioned, like trying to shift the norm, like communication norms in a family, right? For example, is not completely on just on you. I think it can be a little bit more simple when it's just like your own homework, versus trying to impact the relationships in your life.
And last question, do you have any like last words for somebody who's thinking of like, doesn't matter, male identified, female identified, however they identify, like thinking of going to therapy and not sure, like, should I go, should I not? Anything that you got for that?
Yeah. I think we do have like an in-between program where if you're not sure whether you want to check out therapy, you can go to Let's Talk.
Yes.
So it's like a drop-in consultation available. And I find that a good amount of the students that I see through Let's Talk are asking those questions. Okay. And then that space can be a nice place where you can go into that question a little bit deeper, being like, okay, well, why are you considering going into therapy and what would you be wanting out of it? And so I think, when you look at that, and then it can start to like get more clear of and it also going back to that point earlier about why people don't go into therapy, if there's a particular stigma that's holding you back, what is it about that stigma, that is preventing you? And if it is preventing you, like, how much is that delaying your healing? Like, are you going to have to deal with this later on in life? And it's okay, if right now isn't the time where you want to go to therapy. Sometimes it's not easy to do therapy in certain seasons of life. But I would say, try to take an inventory of what it feels like available to work on, and if it feels like it's something that needs to be addressed sooner rather than later, might as well just give it a shot.
Yeah.
So
and I know Let's Talk is like drop in, you can come in anytime. And it's an Applebee. I think it's always on the first floor, right? Okay. Yeah, it's just like a drop in. Is that like a national? Because St. Thomas had that too. I feel like everyone has that.
Jake and I ended our conversation shortly after that, but I wanted to go ahead and thank him for his time because I know he's very busy, and also give you all some information about that Let's Talk program. Let's Talk is a program that provides informal virtual and in-person drop-in consultations for U of M students throughout the academic year. No appointment is necessary, so you can just drop by during scheduled times. Let's Talk is not a substitute for formal counseling and does not constitute mental health treatment, but counselors can listen to specific problems, provide support, and help explore solutions and give information about other resources you might want to look into. If this sounds good to you, you can look them up online at counseling.umn.edu/Let's Talk. Thanks for listening. My name is Demi. I'm the Men's Engagement Coordinator at the Aurora Center for Advocacy and Education, and I'll see you on the next one.